Welcome back to Let's Talk. So for today's episode and for more episodes going forward, each week I will be doing a preview for the Premier League fixtures for the upcoming week and a review of the Premier League fixtures from the previous week, starting with a review of game week 1 today. Now, firstly, I just want to say how much I've missed the football. I know during the summer months, well basically between May and August, Saturdays don't feel quite the same without having the football, so it's great to have the football back. But my enthusiasm generally for the football after watching game week 1 has fell down once again because the Premier League itself is becoming a less enticing thing for people to watch as a neutral and for people to watch in general because of the incompetence of the refereeing in the Premier League. But we'll get to that. We'll get to some more individual examples of that as we move through the podcast. We're going to start at Stamford Bridge with my team Liverpool travelling to play Chelsea. I thought Liverpool started the game extremely well. Dominic Szoboszlai and Alexis McAllister looked like they'd been in the Liverpool team for years on end, even though McAllister was playing in this deeper role, which obviously doesn't suit him, but I feel like he had a decent game playing out of position. He had a far better game than Cody Gakpo did. Cody Gakpo looked far more like he was out of position in centre midfield than McAllister did, moving from centre mid to defensive mid. Although when I say defensive mid, just the deepest of the midfield three. But yeah, McAllister and Szoboszlai, particularly the way Liverpool moved the ball for the goal, the way the players linked up, Liverpool showed what a good Liverpool team is going to look like this season, which is very direct, very creative and strong going forward. And I feel like Liverpool this season will always be a goal in Liverpool, so teams will never feel safe when they play against Liverpool this season. Even when they might have periods of dominance in the game, Liverpool will always be able to spring a counter-attack and threaten them moving up the pitch. After the first maybe 30-35 minutes, Chelsea started to really get back into the game. I thought Enzo Fernandez started to exert his influence and he was fantastic. His ball control and the way he moves in tight spaces is incredible. He wriggled through the Liverpool midfield a couple of times, played a few incisive balls forward, cleaned up defensively. Yeah, Enzo, I'm not going to say he looks like he's worth every bit of 105 million because that's a lot of money, but he looks like he's going to be a very good player for Chelsea. Once they partner him with Moises Caicedo, obviously the new British transfer record coming in from Brighton, who Chelsea pipped Liverpool to over the course of the weekend, I feel like that's a very strong midfield duo for Chelsea moving into the future. I felt Reece James had a particular influence on the game in the first and going into the second half, going down that right hand side. James and Sterling had a good time with Robertson. They were able to pull him out, pull him back in, mess him about a little bit. I think Robertson grew into the game later on and started defending better later on in the game, but at least initially I felt like those two gave him some real problems, and he would have been happy that Reece James decided to take a break and go off the pitch because, you know, Reece James can't stay fit for a long period of time. From a positive Liverpool perspective, Mohamed Salah in the first half was great, really direct. I love that pass that Salah plays to Diaz for the goal, because the way the pass is played, it's constantly taking the ball away from the defender, which is giving the attacker more of an opportunity to pip him at the back post and find the back of the net. Although it might have helped Chelsea if Reece James could be arsed running back to help the defender, but you know, if that was Trent Alexander-Arnold who'd done that, you'd have weeks of Sky Sports news articles and video analysis, but because it's Reece James, nothing to be said about that. I thought the two Liverpool centre-backs, particularly Virgil van Dijk, really had a solid game. Van Dijk headed everything away, cleared everything away, won his tackles, led the team from the back, played really well in my opinion. And that is as well as Nicholas Jackson having a really good game for Chelsea. I think both teams had the opportunity to win the game. Both teams probably on the balance of play will be happy to go away with a point. I know a couple of friends of mine were disappointed with Liverpool not getting a result. I feel like that we'll have to view that point at Stamford Bridge in a few months' time, and whether, because if Chelsea go on and have a great start to the season playing really well at home, that point will start to become more valuable. If Chelsea are poor, then obviously we'll look and think, why weren't we ready for the first game of the season? The referee in this game, Anthony Taylor, I felt had a really poor game, if I'm honest, as the referee. I felt he missed a headed he missed Enzo Fernandez putting his head into Diogo Jota. He mustn't have seen that part of the incident and just seen them both come together, so he booked both of them, which I thought was a bit strange. I thought it was strange as well that VAR didn't tell him to have a look. I remember Darwin Núñez getting sent off for a similar thing last season, and I wonder whether if Diogo Jota play acts and throws himself to the ground, does he get a red card in that situation? I thought the handball was egregious, if I'm honest. Nicholas Jackson, people can argue that he was close to the ball, and his hand was relatively close to his body. I've seen a few stills. People deliberately tried to manipulate. His hand was a little bit away from his chest. Luis Diaz won the header. The header was on target and moving at pace, and it struck him in the hand. Now, I don't understand how that wasn't even worth the referee having a look at on the VAR monitor. I understand this protocol this season about having a high bar in terms of these things, but I just don't understand that from a refereeing perspective. And this weekend there were plenty of things I didn't understand from a refereeing perspective. I'm going to cross the park now and talk about Liverpool's blue neighbours Everton, who I think have every right to feel robbed given what happened to them this weekend. They played Wolves at Goodison Park. During the game, Everton dominated for large periods, created a lot of good chances. Unfortunately, when you have Neal Maupay up front, good chances become bad chances, which is why I seen a stat about XG. Everton had the most XG for a team to not score a goal, and this is why I have my issues with the XG stat. XG doesn't take into account who is taking the chances. If Mohamed Salah or if Harry Kane is having the same chance as Neal Maupay, they are not the same in terms of they should not be the same in terms of expected goals, yet they are with the expected goals algorithm. Yeah, Neal Maupay, as a forward, he does a lot of the dirty work, but when you're someone in Everton's position who need goals from their centre forward, he's simply not good enough, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's moved on before the end of the window. Nathan Patterson had a gilt-edged chance that he should have converted. It was not an open goal, but it was a large part of the goal was gaping for him, and he managed to sky it over the bar. But Everton had a perfectly legitimate goal not count in this game. The ball comes into the box. James Tarkowski stands his ground and isn't actually looking at the goalkeeper. Leno claims the ball, falls over Tarkowski, ball spills to Michael Keane. Michael Keane stabs it towards the goal, and unbelievably, the referee blows the whistle before the ball goes into the back of the net. Now, I believe if he'd allowed the ball, which is what they are told to do, the referees are told to allow the play to continue and then go back, because if something happens, you can always review it. If something doesn't happen, then obviously you can't review it in that sense. They couldn't decide it was a goal after the referee had blown his whistle, which I actually think was a disgusting performance from that referee. But from a Fulham perspective, Fulham hung in there, stayed in the game as the away side. When you're an away team and you're at a place like Everton and they're having chances and the chances aren't going in, you're going to grow in confidence the further you get into the game. The change for Cordova-Reid worked a treat. Ball fizzes across the box, back stick, nobody marking him. Cordova-Reid 1-0. Marco Silva takes 3 points down south, and he'll be very happy with that. Games like Everton away, Sheffield United away, Luton away, all of these games will be games where teams like Fulham will be looking and thinking, if we can take 3 points there, we're going to be taking massive strides towards that 40-point barrier and staying in the Premier League. Moving down to 62 to another absolutely ridiculous refereeing decision, we get to Manchester United versus Wolves. Now, we'll get to the referee at the end because I think the game deserves to be talked about as well. Wolves, for a team that's been written off by many, including myself, for a team that's had off-field turmoil all summer, players leaving, managers leaving, and for Gary O'Neill, who's only been the coach for the last 5 days, I feel like the performance was fantastic. They created lots of chances. Mateus Cunha was excellent at everything aside from putting the ball in the net, he had a couple of chances, particularly the one that struck the post, where I thought that he maybe should have done better from a finishing perspective. But in terms of how he played, how he linked up with Neto, how he linked up with Sarabia, they played really well. And for years, actually, in terms of creating counter-attacks and stuff, Wolves have actually played well. The issue is no one's putting the ball in the back of the net at a consistent clip. And all of these players, they've almost went down the route of every player's going to have to chip in with 8 goals from him, 6 goals from him, 10 goals from him, which is fine, but I'm not sure whether that's going to be enough for them. I'm not sure whether they're going to play that well again, to be honest, this season, particularly away from home at a top side. They might have lost their opportunity to beat a top side away from home. And United were there to be beat, particularly in the first half. I thought they were really poor, lack of cohesion, disjointed. The two centre midfielders that are supposed to be helping Casemiro in Bruno and Mount, the ball often found itself with Casemiro and a couple of Wolves players breaking forward around him. And at his age, he's not going to be able to clean up the way he used to clean up. And you're putting a lot of pressure on him to be able to defend those sort of situations for 90 minutes every week. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if United found another defensive midfielder in the market to come and alleviate some of that pressure on Casemiro. The Butcher, the best centre half on the planet. What happened, mate? Taken off at half time. Apparently it was a precaution due to an injury to his ankle, but Martinez is a good defender, but I feel like he got away with a lot last season, and United as a unit defended well last season. It'd be interesting to see if teams key in on him this season, if they exploit his lack of height, if they exploit his lack of physicality, which Wolves did do in that first half. Moving into the second half, again, Wolves continue to mount the attacks. I think they had 23 shots on the United goal, which is one of the most the visiting team has had at Old Trafford in the Premier League era. Saying that, the Manchester United goalkeeper, Andre Onana, he faced everything, was really commanding, really dominating. He was vocal with his defenders, he made all the saves he needed to save. But we obviously are going to get to the important thing at the end of the game, which is the clothesline from hell that he hit the Wolves striker with, that the referee and the VAR deemed not to be a penalty. Now, I heard Jamie Carragher on Sky say he wasn't surprised once it wasn't given, that it wasn't reviewed and changed. I'm a little bit disappointed in Jamie saying that. Any other part of the pitch, and that is a foul. That is a foul. Everyone knows that's a foul. All the people watching knew it was a foul. All the United fans know it's a foul. It's one of the most egregious VAR decisions I think I've ever seen. The fact that they are, like, if we can contrast it to the Everton game, the ghost goal that Everton should have got, that they didn't get, that was genuinely the referee made a mistake in blowing the whistle and didn't give the VAR an opportunity to rectify that mistake. If you look at the United game, the VAR and the referee both had an opportunity to give that penalty kick, and they shit out of it. And they shit out of it because they were at Old Trafford, and United, particularly in the VAR era, have got some egregious decisions from VAR. And it's, I don't know about anyone else listening to this podcast, but I find myself, because of VAR, because of other factors in football, not attracted to watching games that aren't my team anymore, because when I watch these games and I see these things happen, I just think, what's the point? The video assistant referee was designed to remove mistakes. Instead, it creates controversy and it creates mistakes. I have a little thing when I'm watching matches where, when you're seeing VAR decisions, whether it's an offside, whether it's a penalty, whether it's a foul, whatever, imagine what the worst possible outcome could be, and it will be that. It's almost as if VAR is being used to forward narratives and create stories rather than actually address issues on the pitch in terms of refereeing mistakes. I don't feel sorry for referees at all. I know there's this movement that we should feel sorry for referees. I don't feel sorry for them. The standard of refereeing in this country has been horrendous for years, and it's almost as if we gave bad drivers Formula 1 cars and said, go out and drive. They are bad referees. We've given them technology and they continue to make bad decisions. I don't understand why we don't have the opportunity to listen to the audio to understand the reasoning behind decisions like the one yesterday, decisions like Nicholas Jackson not being deemed to have handled the ball. And even decisions like, let's move on from the United game and move into the Tottenham game. There was a penalty where Son fouled the Brentford attacker, and like, I remember a couple of seasons ago, Oumar Niasse was deemed to have exaggerated the contact and went down and he got a 2-game suspension, I believe, for exaggerating contact. And nothing ever happened again. That never happened again. No one has been found to have exaggerated contact. And I look at the way the attacker goes down. He has exaggerated contact, and I don't personally believe that should be a penalty. And I think an element of common sense needs to be in play when it comes to situations like that, because that potentially costs Tottenham 3 points. Tottenham's performance as a whole probably showcased that Tottenham are going to be entertaining to watch this season from a neutral perspective. They're quite open at the back. I'm not convinced by Emerson Royal. I know he's had a decent, and Tottenham fans like him, and he's had a decent, compared to where he was, he's had a decent comeback, but I'm not convinced by him. Romero's a very good defender, but he needed to go off, and rightly so, by the way. At the moment, as soon as he headed the ball, you could tell that there was an issue, and it was a good move by Ange Postecoglou to take him off. James Maddison was fantastic. James Maddison, given the sale of Harry Kane, Maddison's going to have to step up, and Maddison has the opportunity to really make this his team. When we look at the decline of Heung-min Son, and we look at the sale of Harry Kane, Maddison can make this team his team. Everything's going to tick through him. And I think he's got good protection behind him in Bentancur and Bissouma. And Tottenham will be able to beat some teams this season, but they'll also be on the end of some beatings this season as well. I like the spirit that Ange has brought to that team. I like him taking the players over to the fans at full time, creating that togetherness. I think people underestimate what togetherness does for a football club, what having the fans on side does for a football club. And I think that's only going to serve Tottenham in good stead. And it'll probably give him a little bit of extra time as well. If in case results are going badly, people will see that he's got a connection with the fans, the higher ups at Spurs. But I do think Tottenham need to bring a striker in before the end of the window, because Richarlison's not going to be a person to replace the goals of Harry Kane. Moving on to Arsenal, unconvincing really. They scored 2 very good goals, particularly that Bukayo Saka goal, reminiscent of Ian Robben, the way he drifted in from that right hand side, killed the ball into the top corner. And if Bukayo Saka can maintain that sort of form and have that long range threat, which I think a lot of clubs have negated over the past 10 years, having the ability to shoot from range drags defences out, because they have to block shots from range, which allows people to get in behind. And I think if Bukayo Saka can do that, it's another string to his bow, as it were, which will stand Arsenal in good stead going forward. I thought Martinelli played really well. Declan Rice had the Declan Rice game, which is most weeks you're not really going to notice him too much, which shows that he's doing his job. And the only real downside for Arsenal is they allowed too many chances. When I say they allowed too many chances, they allowed quality chances, which is what top teams do. Top teams don't give away that many chances, but the chances they do give away are quality chances typically. And obviously losing Jurrien Timber is going to be a real issue for them moving forward, and he sounds like he's going to be out for a long time, so prayers that he has a speedy recovery, because that was a big outlay and he looked like he was going to be a very important player for Arsenal, particularly after that Community Shield performance. Moving on to Arsenal's Community Shield opponents in Manchester City, the Friday night game. Nice little layup for Manchester City on the Friday, going to Turf Moor against a Burnley team that's not going to rough them up anymore, a Burnley team that's going to try and play out from the back and play expansive football. And Burnley, when they play that type of football, what I always feel about teams lower down the league, when they are ball playing teams, they will get a few results, but typically if you're going to play good football and your opponent from the top 6 or 8 is going to play good football, they've got better players than you, so they're going to play through you, and that's exactly what City did. Didn't take Erling Haaland a very long time to get on the score sheet. He looks like he's on track for another great season. And he will have to, ironically, he will have to pick up more of the goals this season with the loss of Ilkay Gundogan and with the loss of Riyad Mahrez. I think there'll be even more pressure on Erling Haaland to score goals, and I think he I think he's obviously up to the task, being the cyborg that he is. City look fine defensively, which is what I expect. John Stones had a good game. Phil Foden had a good game, and it'll be interesting given Pep Guardiola came out today and said that Kevin De Bruyne will be out for 4 months, potentially longer than 4 months, given his age, given his rehab. It's gonna Kevin De Bruyne, basically Guardiola confirmed that Kevin De Bruyne for the first half of the season is not going to be a factor for Manchester City, which is a big loss. It's a big loss. I did expect him to be less of a factor this season. I expected him to be rotated more and be protected, but obviously that's not going to be the case now because he's out, and it will be interesting to see how Manchester City use Foden in De Bruyne's absence, because Foden's been around the Manchester City first team now for a long time. He's had lots of good games, he's had games where he's not really been involved, but Foden's really going to have to step up and show that he can be one of City's main men. Otherwise, I fear he's always going to be one of those players who can get into the team, then he's out, then he's in, then he's out. I think he's got a real opportunity to grab that first team berth and make himself one of the players who's going to start 70% of the games in all competitions. So it'll be interesting to see how Foden does. And yeah, Burnley, from a Burnley perspective, keep playing the way you play. Don't change principles, I think. I think the way Vincent Kompany plays is a nice, attractive brand of football. But often when a team comes up from the Championship that dominates the Championship, they stick to the principles. They stick to the principles to a point. It goes wrong. They throw the principles out the window, and all of a sudden you've got a team that's built to pass the ball, playing defensive football and lobbing the ball up front. I think they're gonna lose some games, but stick to what you know. Stick to what got you into the Premier League, and I think Burnley are better than 3 other teams in the league, so I think Burnley should be fine. Let's see some other games from the weekend. Brighton. Thought Brighton's performance was great. They showed that they're not gonna be a team that just goes into the top half of the table and drops out of it. Mitoma, fantastic. They've spawned another one in Adingra, who took his goal really well. They defended really well. I thought again, going back to the referees, I think we should just scrap English referees and bring in referees from abroad, or train a whole new batch, because I looked at the penalty given against Brighton. I think it was a given against Dunk. He slid to block the ball. His arm is near enough by his side. I know it dips a little bit. He's not even facing the ball. I don't know how that can be deemed as a penalty when the Nicholas Jackson one wasn't. I think it's really silly, to be honest, that it wasn't deemed a penalty. But that was the only negative on what was otherwise a brilliant Mitoma. Some of the skill from Mitoma, fantastic footballer. And I think Milner and De Hood were fine in the centre of midfield. Milner's going to bring that experience to Brighton, and particularly in Europe when they play European games, Milner's going to be a really valuable asset for them. From a Luton perspective, look, I mean, games against top half teams are away from home are going to be free hits for Luton. If they get tonked in every single one of them, it doesn't really matter. They're not the games they're expected to get points from. So I think Luton will just take it as an introduction to life in the Premier League, but they'll be looking for the next home games and trying to get points from them, which I think should obviously be the target. I didn't see too much of the Crystal Palace game with Sheffield United. I know both teams will. To be honest, I'm not going to talk too much about stuff that I haven't really seen. I think West Ham Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth will be the more disappointed of the two. Games like West Ham at home, Everton at home, Luton, Sheffield United, Forest. These are games that Bournemouth are going to need to win if they want to race to that 40-point threshold. And they'll be disappointed that they weren't able to get the victory in that game. West Ham, I think, will be happy. Very good goal from Jarrod Bowen, who, if Lucas Paqueta leaves, which is expected to Manchester City, Bowen will have to take more of the responsibility, score more of the goals, create more chances, and really make it. Bowen has the opportunity to really make it his team and be the deciding factor in West Ham being good this season or not, really. And I think Bowen he's a very good player, Bowen, and he is one of those unlucky players who missed this opportunity to go to a team that's higher up in the league, and now I don't really think will. I think any step that Bowen makes will probably be sideways rather than forwards, like up the league, which is a shame, but he can make himself a West Ham Premier League legend if he continues to play for West Ham and score goals and influence games. So, and obviously scored the goal in the final of the Conference League, so he's already halfway there. But I think the general consensus from game week 1 is most teams were feeling the games out, other than my star of the week this season, the star of the week, which I will be picking a team that has been the star of the week every week when I do my reviews. This week it will be Newcastle United, and in particular Alexander Isak and Sandro Tonali. Now, in my first video, I spoke about how Sandro Tonali, I wanted to speak a little bit more about Sandro Tonali, and what I wanted to speak about is I don't believe people have the correct idea of what Tonali is. And I think the game on Saturday showed us a little bit of what Tonali is going to be expected to do for Newcastle this season. I think people thought Tonali coming in would free up Bruno to go further up the pitch. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think that Tonali coming in, Bruno will stay back, Tonali will be the one that goes up the pitch. Took his goal extremely well, had another chance not too long after. I think Tonali will find himself running into the box quite a lot, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do further up the pitch, given that responsibility to score goals. I thought Anthony Gordon was electric in the first half, particularly the way he put the cross in for the Newcastle first goal, and he gave Matty Cash a real rough ride in that first half. And I think what Newcastle shown in the game is Newcastle have a little bit of depth, and they've got goals. Isak, the way Isak took his goals was fantastic. I think I might have glossed over him a little bit when I spoke about the Golden Boots chase. I do think it'll be Erling Haaland as a definitive number 1, but underneath I could definitely see Isak being competitive for second place in the Golden Boot race. The way he scored his second goal, it was, I don't want to say it was Thierry Henry, but it was very instinctive finish and very good movement. And you combine him with having the goals of Callum Wilson, who's always going to chip in, and Harvey Barnes, who come off the bench, got his ideal debut, scored a great goal. I think Harvey Barnes as a winger is a lot more of a goal scoring winger than a creator. And then so you look at Harvey Barnes, you look at Isak, and you look at Wilson and think there might be 40, maybe even more than 40 goals between them in the Premier League, and I might have underestimated that. I do think obviously when European football kicks in and when they start playing more difficult teams and playing multiple times a week, there will be questions, but Newcastle, brilliant start to the season. Aston Villa, to contrast, unlucky to come away with 5 goals conceded. It reminded me a little bit of the Brighton-Everton game at the Amex last season, where Villa were constantly in the game. Villa never felt like they were out the game for me until probably about the 75th minute. But when Newcastle went forward, Newcastle just seemed to have that extra little bit that created chances, and created good chances, and they seemed to be able to finish the dinner, which Villa struggled with a little bit. I thought Watkins was isolated. I thought Moussa Diaby was fantastic. He was appearing on the left, he was appearing on the right, he was quick, he was dynamic, he was skillful as well. He was drifting in and out and really causing problems, and took his goal really well. It's a real shame about Tyrone Mings. We've said this plenty of times, a lot of people have said this. The offsides where the linesman knows it's offside but doesn't raise the flag, someone was always bound to get hurt, and we have our first casualty of it with Tyrone Mings, which is it's a real shame for him and a real shame for Aston Villa. I thought when Pau Torres came on, he struggled. It was a real baptism of fire. I think they would have hoped to bring him in for a home game against a Luton or a Sheffield United or something, for him to just get his foot on the ball a little bit. Going up to a rowdy St James's Park and coming on 30 minutes in, 40 minutes in after your team's losing and the other team's on top of you, that's a difficult start. But yeah, I think it wasn't ideal, but it is what it is. So that's game week 1. So I think the biggest takeaway from game week 1 is sort the referees out, please. We can't go through the season with these sorts of decisions happening week in, week out. It will take away from the quality of the games, take away from the quality of the football, and to be honest, it'll just take away from people's enjoyment. So, message to the Premier League, sort the referees out. Aside from that, look out for my Game Week 2 preview, which will be coming out later this week. Subscribe if you enjoy what you're listening to. I'm not going to tell you to smash that like button. Like it if you want to. Share it if you want to. I'd like to grow the channel pretty quickly. But other than that, thanks for taking your time. See you soon.